So, what in the world could a soccer coach possibly teach you about writing? I know, it sounds like a total stretch, right? But stick with me because a writer named Ed Newman found this incredible connection between the two. We're going to dive into his story, and it might just change how you think about getting good at, well, pretty much anything.
I mean, really, think about it for a second. On one hand, you've got soccer. It's all about running, kicking, teamwork out on a field. And on the other hand, you've got writing, which happens, on a page. And it's all about words and grammar and creativity. They couldn't be more different. So how on earth could a lesson from the soccer field completely flip the script on how we learn to write? That's the big question we're tackling today.
So to figure this out, we've got to meet the guy who accidentally discovered this connection. Let's start with part one, the unlikely coach.
All right, so this is Ed Newman. He's a pro writer, and for him, writing is everything. It's not just his job, it's this fundamental skill. He truly believes that if you can write well, you've basically got a superpower that can open up all kinds of opportunities in your life.
But you know how life is? It loves to throw you a curveball. Newman's son gets totally into soccer, and guess what? The team needs a coach. Now, Newman knows zip, nada about the sport, but he steps up anyway. And just like that, this writer finds himself on a soccer field, totally out of his comfort zone.
So what do you do when you're completely in over your head? Well, if you're like most of us, you hit the books. And that's exactly what Newman did. Which brings us to our second part, searching for benchmarks. He was going to figure this thing out.
And I mean, he went all in. We're talking library trips, studying drills, learning all the rules. He even went to a coaching clinic. He was convinced there had to be a secret formula, a perfect by-the-book system to turn his team of 10-year-olds into champions. And get this, it wasn't some local community center clinic. Oh no, this thing was being led by a total legend, a guy named Buzz Legos, who is the head coach for the pro team, the Minnesota Thunder. Newman must have been thinking, this is it. I'm about to get the secret sauce from one of the best in the business.
Okay, so this is where everything changes. Newman's there, pen and paper ready, expecting to hear about complicated drills and secret strategies. But what he heard instead was something he never, ever saw coming. Let's get into part three, the coach's surprising answer.
So the clinic is wrapping up, they get to the Q&A, and another coach asks the million-dollar question. It's the one everyone in the room, especially Newman, was dying to ask. What should our 10-year-olds be able to do? What are the benchmarks? How fast should they be? How good should their kicks be? What makes a player good at this age?
Coach Lagos just listens, takes a beat, and then he basically told them to throw away the playbook. He said all that stuff, all those drills and numbers, it all comes down to just one thing, one single crucial thing.
His answer? Don't even think about it. Only one thing is important, that they enjoy the game. Can you just imagine Newman's reaction? He showed up looking for a complex formula and walked away with this incredibly simple, powerful idea. The secret wasn't drills, it wasn't discipline, it was joy. That the only way to get really good at something is to actually love doing it.
So that little nugget of wisdom really stuck with Newman for years. And eventually he found the perfect chance to use it in a place that couldn't be further from a soccer field. Which leads us to part four, from soccer to sentences.
Fast forward a few years. Newman's now in a different kind of coaching role. He's homeschooling his kids, and he's got to teach them writing. And if you've ever tried to make grammar exciting, you know it's a tough gig. And that's when he remembered what Coach Legos said.
And boom! It was like a light bulb went off. He thought, wait a minute. If the secret to making great soccer players is making sure they love the game, couldn't the same exact thing apply to writing? So he made a decision right then and there. Forget the rigid rules. Forget all the discouraging red marks on the page. It was time to focus on making it fun.
So, how did he pull this off in practice? Well, his approach was actually pretty simple, but it was a total game changer. First, he'd start with these really fun, creative exercises. Things like, okay, describe your bedroom, but from the point of view of an ant. Brilliant, right? Then he graded them on creativity and effort, not just on whether every comma was perfect. And maybe the biggest change of all, he stopped being the teacher standing over them and became a partner, sitting right next to them to figure out the tricky parts together.
His whole philosophy flipped. It wasn't about finding errors anymore. Instead, his job was to figure out what his kids were trying to say and then help them find the best words to say it. It turned into a team effort. And what that does is it builds confidence, right? It makes them feel safe enough to actually get creative and take some risks with their writing.
So what started as a personal experiment in homeschooling actually points to this massive truth about how we learn. Anything, really. And it all boils down to one simple idea. Which brings us to our final part. The key is enjoyment.
And Newman himself sums it up just perfectly. He says the real engine behind success in anything is motivation. And we know this now, right? That inner drive, that feeling of just loving what you're doing, it is so much more powerful than things like grades or deadlines. Think about that for a second. Skill doesn't come first and then create passion. It's the other way around. Passion is what drives you to build the skill.
And when you make enjoyment the top priority, the results are amazing. First off, kids who like to write, well, they just write more. It's that simple. And the more they write, the more chances you have to coach them and help them improve. But there's this other really cool benefit. You get this incredible peek inside their heads. You get to see how they think and who they are.
And this entire idea, this whole journey that started at a random soccer clinic, it became the big idea behind Newman's book, which is called Writing Exercises. The whole point is just to help any student, anywhere, find that joy in writing.
So I want to leave you with this one last question to chew on. Most of us grew up believing that to get good at something, you have to grind it out, that it's all about tough, joyless discipline. But what if we've had it backwards this whole time? What if the real secret to becoming a master, whether it's on a soccer field or with a pen in your hand, isn't discipline at all, but the light?